Like, what the heck is going on here? Why does this guy have garlic all over his person? And that's when he said, almost very casually, that it was, quote, to keep the zombies away. Which personally, I don't know much about zombies, but I always thought that cloves of garlic were more for vampires. But I guess in Matthew's case, garlic also worked as zombie repellent. I don't know. But that was red flag number 1. And then it gets even worse from here. Instead of taking Matthew directly to the police department, they first took him to the local hospital. But luckily for the investigators, Matthew was not the greatest at keeping his mouth shut. Because while he was in the ambulance, he told one of the officers, quote, "I'm sorry, I had to kill them." Now, by now, the investigators' minds were racing. First, he talked about zombies and how he needed to repel them. Now he's talking about how he had to kill his friends. It just wasn't looking good. Then, to add another confusing layer on top of it, Matthew started rambling about how he was an alien. How he was an alien that was born in an incubator. Then he went back to the fact that he had killed all of these people, and he talked about how if you kill in self-defense, it's, quote, just and fair. So while he had apologized for killing people, he wasn't really sorry. He felt like it was what he had to do. And if you thought that those comments were wild, just wait. Because by the time that they had arrived at the hospital, Matthew had moved on from zombies to werewolves. He was telling doctors that he was being controlled by the sun god, who apparently is not fond of werewolves. So it was his mission to take all of them down. And Matthew was quoted as saying, "I tried to kill them as quickly and as humanly as I could, but they were struggling." And at no point during any of this did he seem emotional about it or like he showed any sort of remorse. It was just very casual, very collected. And it didn't matter whether he was talking about zombies or werewolves. He described what he had done as just this completely normal thing. So I think it's safe to say that everything that Matthew had said up until that point, it was a pretty big indicator of where his mental health stood. And through it all, one thing stayed the same. He had stabbed those 5 people. He never denied it. He never tried to act innocent. In fact, he kept admitting to it. So the admission never changed. But the why behind it, that continuously changed. Like I mentioned earlier, the 2 victims who were transported to the hospital unfortunately passed away shortly after. So it's not like the authorities were able to interview them and ask them what had happened. They were likely in critical condition from the moment that they were brought in until they passed away. So that meant that the only person who truly knew what went on that night inside that house was Matthew. Sure, the others knew a little bit because they were there prior to the attack, then they were there for the aftermath, they also were there for the chase, but nobody was in that room with Matthew when he started stabbing the people that he once called friends. So if the investigators wanted the truth about what happened that night, they knew that they were going to have to get the truth from Matthew. The same Matthew who thought that he was being controlled by a sun god and that he was some kind of werewolf or zombie hunter. And finding that truth was going to open up a whole new can of worms.